All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Tiny Boy Trying to Grow. TBT2G is the acronym for that. Did I tell you about that title, or is that the first time you've heard it?
That is the first time I've heard it.
Okay. I didn't even tell Jerry the name of the podcast. So I'm here with a special friend of mine named Jerry. Jerry, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, good sir. How are you at this time?
I'm doing well. Why don't you I want it to be known right off the bat what your title is in terms of that I've known you as all this time, and you refer to yourself as the master of.
What did I, at this time it may have slipped my mind. I think it did, and it has. I don't know, the jack of all trade,
Master of
master of
Jerry.
none. Master
You've
of
always
who?
told me you were the master of rhetoric.
Oh, that I most certainly did. I am the master of rhetoric. That is true, as you probably would have, gauged if I went on just talking and talking.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, master of rhetoric. I forgot about that. I am an aging man, but I do appreciate you being around to be a reminder of great things that were once said by great people such as myself. But yes, master of rhetoric. I like that.
All right.
Yes.
So the things I ask everybody that I have on the stream, Jerry, is where did we meet?
Oh, well, we met at our former employer called Genpack.
Yes.
Yes.
So for the record, that's the same. I met Jerry at the same job I met Tyler at. A good amount of my stream knows Tyler. So.
Oh. Hello, Tyler.
So yeah, same job there. How long have we known each other, Jerry?
I will say this is going on a little bit over 2 years now.
Okay.
Yeah, to be exact.
And what do you do for work now?
I work now at Quicken Loans, where I am pretty much a loan analyst, making certain that things are what they are and making sure docs are signed, sealed, to be delivered for that good old mortgage.
Okay. So I didn't tell Jerry any of the topics that we're going to talk about today. I've only skimmed over them. I haven't really given it any hard thought either. So we're kind of on common ground. I told Jerry that it's better if his answers are just fresh. So feel free to not hold back and talk whatever you want to talk about. It's open game here.
Okay.
So the first question is, what are your thoughts on online relationships / long distance? Do you have any experience with these or no?
No, on both realms, beginning and ending. No, I do not. I have no experience on online relationships in terms of boyfriend-girlfriend material being started that way.
Mm.
Long distance relationships, I really don't have any concrete thoughts or opinions on it. I think it can work, given the fact that if the two individuals are in a relationship, or at least know each other well enough to a point where trust can be established, that in case while one is away from the other, they won't stray off and play. In that regard, I guess it could be something that works.
Is that what you said?
Yes, and play, yes.
Okay.
And that's pretty much one of the pitfalls I've seen in those who've been in long-term relationships where, just time apart is not good, and they end up drifting to other pastures, I must say. And then, when they come back on the same territory, it's just a lot of fussing and fighting and carrying on. And why did you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, I trusted you, and then it all goes to what. But
so if you can avoid all of that,
yeah,
then it could work.
Yeah, just not. I would recommend not doing it. If
Okay.
you're, if you're not a person that has good moral character and principle. Not everybody can't be me, but so.
Okay. Yeah, I would say, I come from a background of online video games, so the online relationships is something that is pretty prevalent, I would say, in the gaming community, especially in the game I played, Competitive Left 4 Dead 2. It was almost all, it was way too common. And in my opinion, it's really, I would say 1 or 2 of, out of 10, online relationships, especially through video games, are actual relationships, and the other 8 are just there just to make yourself feel better and pat yourself on the back and say I got a girlfriend. You know what I mean? Because a lot of those have no substance at all. They end very quickly, and I've never understood the reasoning of getting into one of those, just because, I mean, partly because I've never met anyone on, like, a girl. Most of the girls in online gaming are kind of annoying. So I think I've never met a girl that I'm like, oh, I'd like to date this person, especially with them not being near me. I don't know. That's just, there'd have to be a lot there for me to want to start that, and I've never even gotten close to being like, yeah, that's enough for me. So I think in terms of long distance relationships, one of my best friends from college, actually, Bryce, who was on the previous episode of the podcast, he was in Florida doing like job training for like 3 months or something like that. I don't know, it's a few months. And he met his now wife down there, and she was from Michigan too, but she worked down there, and he met her there. They dated long distance for like 6 or 7 months before they got engaged. And now they're married and they live in Michigan. She came back up to Michigan. So, I mean, I've seen it work, obviously, knowing that case, but I think it can be very difficult. I think you have to make like a conscious effort and choice very consistently to, like, you have to do like Skype dates and, like, you know, the stuff like that. And it has to be like a hard effort, because it's very easy to just be like, oh, well, maybe I don't feel like Skyping this week. We're just typing, like, talking on Facebook, whatever. Like, it's easy to let it slide, and I think you have to make a conscious choice consistently to, like, make an effort to keep it going, which can be really hard for most people. So I would say it's very difficult to make work, but if you're dedicated enough, and if you like each other enough, I guess, then you can make it work.
Yes, very well said. Very well stated. I was over here nodding my head in agreement, and people can't see that, but yes, I concur.
All right. So we'll go on to the next question here.
All right.
This one's a little bit longer. It has multiple questions here.
Oh, boy.
In it. But what was your first job? How did you get into your current career or type of job? Do you wish you could have chosen a different career?
Okay. Now let's see if I can remember all of that.
So
my first job officially was when I was working, I want to say Burger King, in high school, when I was getting a check and paying into Social Security. Burger King was my first job. I actually enjoyed it. I was working down at the Renaissance Center in Detroit, downtown, and I loved the atmosphere then, even before the resurgence of what we have today. And it was a wonderful experience. I did it for 5.5 months, and then I let it go because I just got tired and bored. And pretty much that's the story. Once I had all the money necessary to pay for my senior dues and graduation and everything, I said, okay, I've done my due, and I let it go. And I finished up high school and went on to greater things. And what led me to the job I have now, something of that nature, I believe it was.
Yeah. How did you get into your current career or type of job?
Oh, how did I get into this one? I simply applied online and got the call back. And that's pretty much how it happened. But no, after 2.5 years of working at Genpact and being laid off, I went into a master's program at Eastern Michigan University for art administration. And so I did a semester there, and it was a very good semester, very successful. And in the process, I got a call from Quicken Loans to pretty much move forward with the process of being interviewed and likely landing the position that I have now. And that's how that happened. And it was strictly something new for me in a sense because I've never dealt with the mortgage business or the industry itself. And it was a wonderful experience to get the training of what it what entails, the role that I do have, and learning more about the mortgage industry and getting a more in-depth understanding of how mortgages work and the terminology and what have you. And I believe the reason that happened was because of my position that I had with Genpact in the years of I'm trying not to say but it's very common and it's just so comfortable. It rolls off the tongue so well. But there we go. See?
It's okay.
But no, yeah, it's okay. No one's gonna whoop me. But the reality of the fact that being at Genpact for 2.5 years and having the experience of dealing with clients on call, at least, on the phone experience, knowing how to talk, manage cases, and write, and just a wealth of experience that I have with training, doing volunteer work, which is very, very, I want to say, 85% of my resume, because I volunteered all my life. I always gave back, even when I didn't realize I was giving back, in a sense of just something I felt it was innate in me to do. If I saw something that needed to be changed or needed to be improved, no matter what the, let's say, issue was, I just always made it my business to take part in it. And some of those issues range from, especially in the city of Detroit, the Detroit public school system, which I felt was a dire need for people like myself and even more younger people to get more involved. And being that we were facing closures. And
what did you do specifically to get involved in that, if you don't mind me asking?
Oh, yeah, specific.
Kind of stuff?
Yeah, what I did was, let's say, for instance, the elementary school that I went to, which was a very renowned elementary school in the city of Detroit, and we had then, when he was in good mind, body, and spirit, Dr. Ben Carson. He was a guest of ours at the school, and he spoke then, and he spoke very well. He's not the same man he was yesterday, I can tell you that much for sure. But we had singers like Anita Baker who performed at our school when she was in her prime. And these are things that, were crucial to our neighborhood at the time, because the school was pretty much a center of excellence and a pillar to the community. And when we were experiencing the housing decline in the state of Michigan, even across the entire country, around 2007, 2008, you had neighborhoods that were drying up based upon people leaving, and so it ended up being an adverse effect on the schools, because the population started to dwindle. And so what I did specifically was galvanize those in the community and the parents of that school to campaign for more children to be enrolled there, and to keep our doors open, because we had an emergency manager by the name of Robert Bob, who wanted to come in and close the school because of that dwindling population. That was his reasoning for it. And so we saved it the first time back in 2007, but 2009 it didn't happen, because the writing was on the wall that they were looking to dismember neighborhoods and disenfranchised neighborhoods for a sort of resurgence of repopulating the areas again with newer housing and just pretty much a different layout. City planning, it happens.
This sounds like a movie.
Yeah, it does, but I've been told to write it, but I'm not a good script writer at this point. I used to be pretty well, into that, but it's been so long. Life gets in the way, and you start working and doing things that you don't, that you didn't even go to school for. So
on that note, do you wish you could have chosen a different career?
I do. I wish I would have went more into the career of politics.
Okay.
I think that's something I was naturally bred for. I've been told to do it, but I'm not certain that I want to at this time. I want to be financially sound before I even dip into that. Not because if you're not financially sound and you go into politics, you're likely to steal. I don't steal. It's just not in my DNA. I don't lie. I'm not a thief, anything of that nature. So it's just pointless to even think that would be a scenario as to why I won't give it a try now. It's just that I just feel that when you can back it up, in terms of when you can back your statements or claims or things you want to see changed in the world, when you can back it up financially, which really changes a lot of things. I believe Cyndi Lauper said it best: money changes everything. I believe that's the truth, and not necessarily anything for the better or for the worse. It's just that it will change things, and it does. And
okay. I think that's true though for anyone, especially once you kind of like if you have something that you haven't necessarily started working on your whole childhood that you continue working on. Like, let's say for me, for example, streaming wasn't something I did until I started in the tail end of college, but it wasn't something I started doing consistently until after college. You can't really, like, you need money to be able to do anything. You need to, like, anyone that has a dream, I guess, always says, and I'm not saying it's a bad reason because it's true, you know, that everyone would say, oh, but you need to be financially secure before I'd be able to do anything with that, or before I'd be able to pursue that. Which, you know, like I said, unless it's something that you, like, are able to do when you're, like, a child, you know, and it kind of, like, is developed by the point you're an adult where you start to need money. I feel like that's, everyone says that. And it's not wrong or anything. It's 100% true, but I just feel like it's really common. Just pointing it out.
Yeah, that's true, and it's a saying that I believe Mary Wilson of the Supremes said. You know, people, dreams don't die. People stop dreaming. And I said, wow. I said, that's a different way of looking at it. And I think that does happen a lot, where people who had aspirations and dreams of doing certain things, where they just get to a point in life where they say, you know what, not so much anymore. And they stop and they don't work towards that dream anymore, or what have you. And sometimes, if not majority of the times, finances is what is the motivating factor. The lack of finances is the motivating factor to pretty much pull the plug. But to be a little bit more specific, I think the career that I would have loved to have had was anything dealing with art, because I can draw, as you probably know, I believe. And
I remember at Gempact I drew the Quaker guy on my dry erase board, and then
sure
it
did.
launched you
that.
into drawing this giant, like, mural on your dry erase board of the Quaker guy.
Yeah.
And mine was just like a little drawing, and I suck at drawing, so it was really bad. And then you had, like, shading and, like, everything on your... we had these big, like, square dry erase boards at our work, and he turned this into, like, a giant mural of the Quaker man.
Oh yes, I most certainly did, and I'm glad you remember that. And when that was actually the beginning of the dry erase board becoming a mural of sorts, where I believe it was the Quaker man, and then it ended up being Maleficent or Scar, I believe, one of the two. I don't know which one came first, but those two donned the board, and a lot of people took notice, and it was nice to be recognized for that.
Until we moved and they took away the dry erase boards.
Yeah, until we moved and they took it away, and that was the end of that. But, you know, all of my life growing up, when I wanted to pursue a career in art and wanted to go to school for it, actually, I was told, no, you shouldn't do it because there's no money in it, and you'll be a starving artist, and you just need to be a little bit more practical and go into something that you can make some money in. Just do that on the side. But then I look at all the advances in the technology that they have today, and you have art being instrumental with a lot of the films that are being made. And
is it?
Yeah, you know, Toy Story.
Yeah, I guess, like, animation stuff.
Animation stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess when you said art, I guess
Yeah.
I didn't think of, like, motion graphics and, like, special effects and stuff. Because I was about to say that most of the movies coming out now are, like, everything's like a sequel. It's either like a Marvel movie or it's a DC Comics movies are
Right.
about to be coming out like crazy, and, like, everything's just a sequel to these superhero movies, or like Fast and Furious and 8.
Yeah, you
and
know,
stuff
and
like
I'm
that.
not a fan of the Fast and Furious franchise. I was not moved by... I went to see the first one, and I just wasn't moved by a lot of noise, or, you know, just over and over. Cars speeding and crashing and shooting. I said, okay, this doesn't do anything for me. Just loud, just very loud. And I just gave up. I won't even entertain the franchise. And people keep telling me, oh, you ought to see it. Even the one where they did a dedication to Paul Walker. I said, yes, God rest his soul, but I don't think I need to see the film to know that he's gone. I saw it on the news, and, you know, just
Honestly, it's like, it's pretty impressive the way they finished that movie, though.
Oh,
'cause,
wow.
I mean, he died during filming, so it was like the first half was him, and then the second half they had, I think he had like 2 brothers in real life, and they had them come in and, like, act the rest of the movie, and they basically CGI'd his face back onto them.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's the way they filmed the rest of it. So the interesting part, well, a part that sucked though, is that there was a one of the bad guys was like this Asian guy who was good at, like, you know, kung fu or whatever, like all these martial arts, and there was a big fight scene with Paul Walker's character and him at the end that was probably already written in, and you could just tell that it should have been so much better. Like they didn't have the Paul Walker in quotes here, his character do much of anything in that fight. It was pretty much like the martial arts guy doing all this cool stuff, and Paul Walker's character is kind of just like,
and for
trying to block
reasons,
it and
because
stuff.
he wasn't there to do it.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, if
Oh.
it was actually Paul Walker, it probably would have had like training, and like he would actually know how to do some of the stuff, and it would be a lot better. But it just felt like it could have been so much better, but it wasn't. That fight scene specifically, because it was like the martial arts guy did like 2 or 3 cool things, and they kind of ended it. And it felt like it should have been like this big fight scene at the end of the movie, but it wasn't. Anyway, we got really off track.
Yes, we most certainly did. But it's just unfortunate. Moving on.
All right, so I have to answer the questions too, I guess. So, what was the first one? What was my first job? My first job was I was an umpire. This was the very first job I had. I was an umpire for 2 years.
Giving out orders.
Yeah. I have a funny story that I always like to tell when I think of umping. This is the only memorable part of umping. Umping overall was not that great. But there's one time I was working a doubleheader with one other guy. So there's 2 umps. There's a home plate ump, and then there's like a base ump out in the field.
Okay.
And so I was working with this one guy. I mean, I never knew the umps that I've never met them before, really. So anyway, it's some kid. He's like my age. I was probably like 16, and he was around 16. And it was a doubleheader. It was 11 and under baseball. It was the first year of kid pitch, so the pitchers are awful. And so, you go in, you tell the coaches, okay, we're going to have a big strike zone because they are bad at pitching. So just have your kids swing, pretty much. Like, come up here swinging. And so the coach, especially on one team, was not liking my strike zone very much. And I rung one of his kids up, called strike 3 on him. The kid got really mad. Their bench exploded. The coach yelled at you. He said, "You're pathetic." He said it to me. And part of me on the inside, I'm just like, dude, this is 11 and under baseball. Like, these children are 11 years old.
Children.
You're setting a bad example right now. But anyway, so that's the first game. I was the home plate ump. He didn't like my umping. So they're already upset. Going into the second game, the parents are upset. Going into the second game, there's parents that sit behind the backstop of home plate, right? And they're chirping. And, I'm out in the field. And the home plate ump, he makes a call. Someone, utters something. And this kid that I didn't know before, he goes, time! He turns around and he goes, who said it? And to the parents. And they just shut up. The rest of the game, they did not say anything else. But I was just out in the field like, dang, that was sweet. That I was really impressed by him doing that because that was really cool and it shut everybody up. And it was
Great.
Anyway, but I always like that story because it cracks me up.
Who said it?
Yeah. And anyway, so that was my first job. And then I worked at service industry stuff like Subway and Taco Bell through college. And then once I graduated college, I had a door-to-door fundraising job, which I did not like at all. I only worked there for a month. And then my next job was where I met Jerry and Tyler at Genpact. I worked there for a little over a year and then was laid off. And then now I work at a small marketing company doing order processing, customer service stuff. So do I wish I could have chosen a different career? The terms of the middle question of how did I get into those jobs. My brother worked at Genpact is how I got into that one. I needed a job, and he worked there, so I applied, and I got it. And same with this job, pretty much. It was just online. I applied. I feel like that's how most jobs nowadays are acquired.
Yeah, for the millennials, especially.
It's pretty much just like you apply, especially because my degree is kind of useless. I have a film degree. So unless you have
Oh, you do?
I do, yeah.
I didn't know that. I have one as well, electronic media and film studies.
Okay.
Okay.
What
friends we are. I didn't know that about each other.
Unless you have a computer science degree or something where it's this is the field I'm going in, that's the jobs I'm applying for. I feel like it's kind of just almost the luck of the draw in terms of what you get a call back on and what's available, I guess, and what you're able to find. So I don't really even view my job really as a career. I don't know how much longer I'll be there. It's really just something that I need, you need money to pay bills. So that's really how I view it. Do I wish I could have chosen a different career path? In terms of my collegiate years, I'm only 24. I turned 25 this year. Um, I do kind of wish I was a computer science major my first semester of college, and I took JavaScript, which most people, everyone that I know that is a programmer says that's a strange first class to take, but that was just the first one they offered. Like, that was the first thing on the curriculum there at my school, so I don't know why it was, but anyway, they all say that's a weird first class to take. I took it, I hated it, and they said every coder hates JavaScript, so that is great. So that made me switch majors because I hated it, and I was like, I don't want to do this for 4 years.
I don't blame you.
But at the same time, I kind of wish I would have stuck with it just because it would have put me in a much better place after college, and I do enjoy learning like technology-ish stuff, and I have a brain that can understand coding and stuff, so I have like the capacity for it. I just kind of wish I would have stuck with it in terms of being better off now. But in terms of besides that, like if like my boss asked me a few weeks ago what kind of job I would like doing, and I just don't really know the answer to that, and I really don't know what I would want to do, and I think there's a lot of people my age that feel that way. But it is what it is. That's kind of the way I look at it, is in terms of my job is what I do to make money, and then I do what I want to pursue on the side, which is like streaming and stuff. So anything else to add on that topic, Jerry?
No, I think that just about covers it. I don't want to get too sidetracked again, so yeah.
Okay, so this one's a little bit more personal. It is, what is your experience with self-doubt, and how do you go about overcoming it?
I have a lot of experience with self-doubt. I believe that's just part of my nature in terms of pretty much how I was brought up. I want to say I had a very good upbringing, but I am the youngest of my siblings, and I always wanted to do things to stand out from my other siblings and just pretty much get noticed. I believe we spoke on this earlier, not too long ago. I was always the kid who wanted the approval of adults because I viewed them as all-knowing and knowledgeable, and I always wanted to learn any and everything. So I always had this drive to learn and wanted to know about life and what's going on, and pretty much anything you can think of. I just had to know. I was a guy who was very inquisitive, and I still am. And when it comes to self-doubt, I believe that a lot of things I could have achieved in life, especially in the arena of sports, for instance. I used to love to run track, and that was my all-time thing. Even to this day, when I hear people say they're fast, I say, well, you haven't raced me. Until you beat me, then you're fast.
Were you a sprinter or a long-distance runner?
I was a sprinter. I cannot go long distance to save my life. I would just collapse. I just can't do it.
Okay.
I tried. I'm not cut for that. I like to just go on and get it over with, but I can sprint for an hour. Just take my little break and say, let's go again. I mean, it's an addiction. And even though my stomach doesn't, reflect that, but I can go. But no, I just, and I think self-doubt came in that regard when I was running, where I just felt that once again, it just takes, with me, I used to be very easily discouraged. If you say something negative and it's a practical negative comment, I would absorb it, and I used to just say, well, you know what, maybe they're right, that makes sense. So I would weigh the pros and cons, and I usually just err on the side of cons and just not pursue whatever I had an aspiration for, such as running track or even playing football. I think I would have been an excellent running back, because I just talented that way. Just something I love to do, and you just work at it. And I always felt that would have been a good football player in terms of a running back, running track. So pretty much sports was something self-doubt got in the way of a lot growing up. But I did learn in my adult years something that just came to me when I was feeling very low and down, just being depressed all the time, because I believe it's just a side effect of being an artist of some sort. I said, you know what? If it doesn't improve me, I refuse to let it move me. And so that just came out of nowhere. And I said, oh, That's it. I said to cure any doubt that comes in my mind, any inkling of just feeling like nothing is going to get done or I just can't do it. I say if it doesn't improve me, I refuse to let it move me. And I've been telling people everywhere I go, I would tell them that, and they all get amazed and wow, I never heard anything like that. I mean, you've heard a lot of sayings that pretty much mean the same thing, but I felt that that was one that was very poignant. Just saying if it doesn't improve you, don't let it move you. So why give power and weight to things that are not improving you? I mean, so if it doesn't improve you, look the other way, because how can it move you if it's not going to improve you? And so that's how I dealt with self doubt, and that's how I apply it to everyday living now, because the gray hairs were getting out of control, and I had to do something to stop it, and that's what I did.
What would you say in terms of not necessarily like negative comments, because there's plenty of times you just get negative comments and stuff, but what would you say if there's sometimes where friends or family members may say, look, maybe you should look at going this route, or something slightly different, et cetera, but it's not something that you have your mind set on, and then if you take advice like that and it ends up being way better, like you know what I mean? Like, I'm giving a bad specific example here, but like if sometimes you have to go through lows to get to a better high later, you know what I mean? What would you say? Would you say that you're saying may not be ideal for that, or what would you say in situations like that where that might be the case?
Well, I know with me personally, when that was always, because I mean, I've always had family members who, and even friends who would say, well, no, you should do this and do that. And the first thing I would do when they would get through with their rant, okay, but what have you done? Mm-hmm. Why haven't you done that? Like, you're giving advice that you didn't even heed yourself. And so they usually would shut them up or get them in an argumentative mode. And anyone who knows me, if you want to argue with Mr. Williams, hey, let's do it. But make certain that you get up right before dawn, because it's hard to win one on me. I'm a Virgo, people. So I dot my I's and cross the T's, as well as the X's. But anyway, so I just feel, and if you haven't noticed by now, audience, I use humor a lot to also deal with anything that pretty much can disrupt the core of life. Bring some humor into it, you can fight through it and deal with it. That's the way I look at things. But in regards to what you said here, I've had that done, and I think that my saying of sorts can still apply if used in the manner of your advice that you're giving me. I understand maybe one that could be sound, but if there's no room for improvement, either way, I'm not going to let it move me. But you won't know unless you, as you say, go through it.
Right. And I'm not saying you should quit if someone tells you to quit. I mean, and that's not what I'm saying. Because I mean, obviously, with streaming, I've had plenty of negative comments come my way and stuff
have you?
That. Oh, plenty. Anyone online has dealt with plenty of negative comments, especially if you're a streamer. Especially if you're a streamer that has a following, and not that my following is huge or anything, but it's more than zero. So anytime you have somewhat of influence, how small that influence is, obviously, mine's not large, but if I was just a streamer with 0 followers and 0 viewers, no one would care to say negative things. But once you have a little bit of a following, and sometimes people might view you as a threat or a competitor, I guess, and I hate both of those words in terms of streamers. I've had negative comments come my way from friends of friends, let's say that. More worried about their friends that, I don't know. I don't want to get too into that.
Okay.
But in terms of my experience with self-doubt, that's something that I've definitely struggled with as well. I think anyone, if they honestly look at themselves, would say that. Obviously, some people are more confident than others, but I'm usually not someone that exudes confidence, especially in public places and stuff. Like at work, I would say hi to Jerry and stuff. But if I was I don't know, if I was in I would stop myself there. I was gonna say if I was in front of a crowd, but I mean I did train a few waves and it was fine, and I actually enjoyed that. But Yeah, I mean, it's if I'm like in front of people I'm not comfortable with, or in an environment I'm not comfortable with. I think that's why the training was fine. It was an environment I was comfortable with, and I knew I was the smartest guy in the room in terms of this topic, you know.
Oh, so you had pretty much a firm handling of what was going on.
It's like if people ask questions, I know more about what than they do, you know, like stuff like that. But if it's like a situation I'm not comfortable with, or an environment I'm not comfortable with, I'm definitely not someone that exudes confidence or would seem like a confident person, I don't think. You know, I'm not one to say fake it till you make it. I'm more of, I just prefer to avoid those situations. So in terms of my experience with self-doubt, I've had it plenty, you know, all the time, so much in my life. In terms of advice of overcoming it, you know, sometimes my attitude, it's kind of the same attitude with work, is sometimes you just got to grind through stuff. Not everything in life is going to be, you know, super positive or super enjoyable. There's some times in life that you just wish were over, and before you know it, honestly, they will be over. Because, I mean, if you think about it, like, you know, getting, like I hurt my leg this month I told you about, and, you know, there was moments early on in that process where I was like, I wish I was injured, or I wish I wasn't injured anymore. I wish my leg didn't hurt, and I wish I could run and stuff like that. And, you know, before you know it, it's over, and here we are like 4 weeks later, and my leg's not 100%, but it doesn't hurt and stuff. So, you know, before you know it, you're on to the next part of life, and there's some moments you just have to put your head down and grind through. And you know, I don't think anyone deserves to have low self-confidence. I think everyone has positive qualities about themselves that they can feel confident about. I don't think anyone, in terms of overcoming self-confidence, or self-doubt, I think there are things that's totally normal to be doubtful about, but yeah, I just don't think it serves any purpose to be doubtful about yourself.
It's very exhausting, I can tell you that much.
Yeah. It doesn't bring any positives. And I don't think anyone deserves to be doubtful about themselves. I don't think no one deserves to lack confidence, in terms of, and obviously you can have too much confidence, but I think looking at yourself with a clear perspective is very important. And if you can't get that clear perspective from yourself, ask a close friend to give it to you, because I think everybody will have somebody, or has somebody that, even if you don't really know it, I think has somebody that you know,
pulls it out of you,
pick you up. Yeah,
right.
And I think if you can't see that in yourself, then ask someone else to, and believe what they're saying, because it's really easy to write people off if they're complimenting you on something that you don't feel confident about. But you know, it's important to have those people in your life. So I would say rely on others and don't be doubtful of yourself. Any final thoughts there?
Yeah, my final thought is also an outlet that you love to do, and or even enjoy, just pretty much that you love to do and enjoy as well. With me, I believe music is the main reason that I've been able to sustain in the world that we called Earth. And without music, I think I would just pretty much dissipate and just not exist anymore. But music is my eternal therapy.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Having an outlet's really important too. And I think that's you know, a lot of people use video games for that, which is totally fine. But that's another reason I never really understood people. This is kind of going off topic here, but like I've said this before on stream, I never fully understood people getting super upset at video games, or being upset at video games every time they play, because like, why are you even playing at that point if it's not fun, and it's your outlet is making you even more angry? Exactly. And I've been, you know, angry at video games before. I'm not saying I'm perfect, but that's just my general look at people who are consistently mad every time they play, which is a thing. But yeah, so I think having an outlet is important as well. I would definitely agree with that. All right. Next question is, have you ever had a point in your life where something significant happens and you have no backup plan? Basically, something in your life ends and you wonder, what am I going to do now?
Oh, wow. That's
I can go first on this one if you want.
Yeah, go first
While
on
you
that
think
one.
about it, because that one might require some thought.
Some deep thought.
I've said this before. I've never like lost a parent or a family member, but I've had definite lows in my life in terms of feeling like there's nowhere to go, or I don't know what I'll do, et cetera, et cetera. The worst months of my life were my senior year of college. It's 2014. So my last semester of college was in the fall of that year. So it was like October or September, I guess, through December, and I graduated in December. That whole semester, I struggled a lot. I struggled with like depression kind of on and off, but that semester was definitely the worst that it's ever been at. The summer before that, I had just found out. So I've said this before on stream too, but basically my parents wanted 4 kids, and I'm the youngest of the 4. But I didn't know until that summer of 2014 that I was their second attempt at a 4th. My mom actually had a miscarriage a year before I was born. So the thought of like, why am I here? Why did I get this chance, et cetera, like the million thoughts that come with that kind of ran rampant the rest of that year. There was a day I specifically remember, one night where I was at college, and I lived on campus that semester because I didn't want to sign a full year lease if I was only going to be there for the first semester. So I lived on campus, and my roommate was gone. He was like never there. So it was just me sitting in there in my room, and I was just sitting in my seat, and I just started crying my eyes out. And I just felt like, I don't want to say worthless, but I just felt like I had wasted an opportunity that was taken from somebody else. Obviously I didn't take it, but like an opportunity that someone else may not have wasted. And I ended up like calling my sister that night, and I talked to her on the phone for hours, probably till like 3 a.m. Just about all the feelings that I was feeling. But yeah, I mean, I've definitely had, that's probably like the lowest point I've had in my life. In terms of, how is this worded? It's just, have you ever had that? There's no advice asking. Anyway, so yes, I've had that. But my whole thing is I'm a Christian. I don't, I've struggled with, along with depression comes, thoughts of, would it be better if I weren't here, et cetera, et cetera. But, I wholeheartedly believe that God didn't put anyone here to kill themselves. I think there's a plan with everyone's life. What that plan is, I have no idea. And there's that's probably part of the point, is that you don't know, so you don't ruin it. But no, I mean, there's definitely a reason that everybody's here, and that reason isn't for you to take your own life. So in terms of my darkest moments, that's really what I clung to, was that, this isn't what I should be deciding. I don't think it's up to people to decide life and death. Yeah, where was I going? What else was I going to say on that front? But yeah, that was, a point where I was like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I don't know what I can do with my life, et cetera, et cetera. And, here I am 3 years later? 3 years later, almost. And, obviously, I think everyone who's had a thought of killing themselves and has chosen not to do it has never regretted that choice. I mean, there might be moments in the future where they might think about it again, but I think there's more positive in life than there is bad. I think that's true for most people. And yeah, the end.
Well, the end.
The end.
Oh, okay.
How you feeling, Jerry?
I am feeling just amazed here, just listening to your story. And I just sat here just wondering, what could I possibly share that would reflect the lowest point. And I'll say it this way. I won't say it's the lowest point of my life, but it does make you feel helpless. Watching someone suffering from a condition and being in denial about the pending end that they're going to face, I think that is something that I did, that I can at least share at this point. My mentor, for example, died in 2012, and this guy was somebody who was relatively healthy, could run, hop, skip, jump, you name it. And at the age of 71, he didn't look his age. He was in relatively good health, always up and going, sharp as a tack, one of the smartest men I've ever known, maybe the smartest, because he knew something about everything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just odd that you can find somebody who knows something about any and everything. And he did. He was a very well-read man, and he unfortunately received some news back towards the end of 2011 in December that he was suffering possibly from cancer of his esophagus. And when he went in and they did a further exam, it confirmed it, and unfortunately it was in stage 4. And I kept thinking, well, this is something they can pretty much take care of. They said they could do the procedure where they can remove part of the esophagus and attach it to the stomach, and that would get rid of the highly cancerous portion of it, and he'll still be able to go on and live. And so, even though I wasn't there when they were talking to him directly at times about his condition, when I came and talked with him, because I was there at the hospital virtually every day, but when I got there to speak with him about it, I noticed that he was changed. Like this man who was once vibrant and still had the faith, it was emptiness in his eyes as he knew himself that he was eventually getting ready to expire because of this condition. And I was still there trying to remain hopeful, and I genuinely thought he was going to survive it. And it was after he ended up suffering a stroke after radiation treatment that I realized that the end was likely near. And I saw him, I believe, 2 days after. I saw him for 2 days consecutively after he had the stroke, and it was just too much on me mentally to process that this possibly was going to happen, as I watched for 3 months him suffering with the cancer. And so for 2 weeks I didn't go to the hospital, and the day that I wanted to go and just couldn't, I felt empty inside, felt drained, and felt like something heavy was just on me, and the skies seemed yellow at that particular day. And I said, something just doesn't feel right. And so the next day I woke up and I found out, as I got the call, that he had died at 3 a.m. that morning. I was just stunned, and I said, this is a reality that has now come, and I have to deal with it. But I believe that may have been the lowest point, because I didn't see it coming, and it was just something that was not expected, because even though he had been diagnosed with it and suffered with it for a little over 3 months before he expired, it still caught me by surprise to know that that life and energy that was once so vibrant is no more, and that I will never see that again, and it is gone. And it's something that just shakes your very foundation, because you try to wrap your head around, like, how did this happen? He didn't seem sick initially. You know, some people have a lot of symptoms that show, but nothing showed with him. And if there was something that did show, he didn't show it. He hid it very well. And that could have been a very strong possibility in this case. But based on everything that we spoke about while he was sick, he didn't know this was happening. And he was in supreme shock. And it was just a shock that never left, because there was nothing you could say to him to give him any inkling of hope that a miracle could likely happen, or that, you know, his body could start to work for the better after the treatment. It was just, I just never seen that in a person, and to witness that, it was quite mentally damaging and alarming and stressful on me physically, because I just never experienced it. A person that you love just go down. And when the funeral happened, it really just came to a head, and I just lost it. I was able to maintain my sanity. I didn't, go knocking people out and breaking into stores or something, and setting the world on fire. But it's just that I got the grief out there instead of holding it in and letting it just, ride with me for a long period of time. And it was refreshing to do. And I just came to the realization that you just never know when the time comes for one to make their exit. But it's always a good thing to know that when that time does come, that you'll be in good standing, knowing that you treated the person well, with respect, and you showed them love while they were here. And I think that's the key to life, and maintaining a healthy way of dealing with exits that are just out of left field, as I call it. You didn't see it coming. So that was a left field expiration date for him in my regards, and it was one of the lowest points of my life, in my adult life, I can say. And I think the best way that I was able to deal with it was the fact that I have good memories, fun memories, and funny memories that keep me alive, where I'm just cracking up throughout the day thinking about something he did or said. And that's just the way it is. That's how I'm able to cope with it. You'll forever miss them until your time comes, but it is something that I don't like about living in terms of death. Death is just something I don't understand. I don't care how religious a person gets or is. No one understands it in this realm that they don't know for certain. They have a strong belief and desire to want to know what happens after life expires, but the uncertainty of what death does and what really happens, I believe that still kind of is what triggers a lot of the emotion of crying when people die, even though you can be saved and sanctified and know the Bible front and backwards. But that uncertainty of just knowing, because you just don't know until you go. And I don't want to go right now to know, but it's just, I believe that's the triggering mechanism that brings out all of that emotion. Even though people will say, well, you should know and have an understanding. This is what ends life, and I don't understand why you get so bent out of shape. You move on. This is what happens. But
I mean, part of it too, I think, is this knowing that you're never going to see that person again on this earth, or any, whether or not you're religious or whatever. But I think even if you are religious, it's still, I never understood not being allowed to be upset over someone dying. Like, that's,
thank you very much.
Even if you are religious, obviously you can still be traumatized that, well, now for the rest of my life this person is not here. But what's interesting, and what I kind of thought of when you were saying that it's someone so vibrant and everything can be, I guess, like, so total opposite, is that something that I heard probably a year ago or so, is that someone, I forget even where I heard it, but they said like, hope is a very interesting idea and concept. It's one thing to lose all hope, is an interesting phraseology, I think, because hope to me is like, it takes effort to hope. I don't think people necessarily have like hope's not a tangible thing that you have and then you lose it. It's just like, it's a verb, it's not a noun. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, hope takes effort, and it's really hard in times like that, both for you and for him, to have hope. And in the darkest of times, it's very hard to find that, or to find the willpower to hope, or to find the reasons to hope. Because, I mean, obviously you can be down, but then if you know, like, for a fact that next week it's going to get better, like, you have that hope of, like, next week it's going to get better. But sometimes when you don't have an objective thing to grasp onto, it's definitely like a conscious choice that's very difficult to either come to terms with, or to grasp, or to truly have in those dark times.
I agree.
All right, we'll do one more. Any final thoughts on that before we move on? That's probably darkest one we'll get to.
Yeah. Only final thought on that is that hang on in there and let it rock. That's life. Just hang on in there and let it rock, because I think Aretha Franklin, my favorite singer of all time, she said it best when she ad-libbed on Freeway of Love on the Conan O'Brien show, the Late Show with Conan O'Brien, I think it was called. And she was doing Freeway of Love, and she went into her gospel segment at the end of it, where those who don't know her style thought it was over with, but no, it wasn't. She went straight into a gospel mode with Freeway of Love, and she went to an ad-lib where she said, "Life will rock you from side to side, yes it will. Sometimes up, sometimes down, but never sitting around." And that is one of my other phrases that I carry with me. No matter what, it's not going to sit around for you or anyone else. So.
All right, so this one, you have a pretty active Facebook page, I would say, Jerry. You make posts pretty frequently. Like, compared to me, at least, I don't post really at all.
Okay,
I posted a
that's
picture
fair.
last week, and before that, I probably haven't posted anything since, like, I don't even know when. It's been a very, very long time. But you get into discussions, and, we talked about how one of our managers posted something on Facebook that you found interesting, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yes,
this
yes.
question is, how do you feel about how people act online versus out in the real world? Do you find people to be more disrespectful towards one another, and should it/could it be regulated? So I guess the first part is how do you feel about how people act online versus out in the real world?
Okay, how I feel about it is that when you're online, there's a safety net where you don't have to face the very likelihood of a physical confrontation if you were to say the things that you say on a keyboard to someone in person. So that is the reason why people do that online. It's so easy to do. And you don't have to face the backlash of a physical confrontation, because not everyone can take a hit. As recently as the past 3 weeks, I've been hearing of one-hitter quitters taking people up out of here in Las Vegas and some other country I read. I said, wow, you just can't go around punching people. You'll kill them. So that's another thing. I believe people do it because it's a safety net for them. The physical confrontation is not there. And I believe that also with the online behavior, even if it's not one in which you're talking about someone, it's a sense of being validated. Everybody wants to be noticed and feel a sense of belonging. And so I believe they do things, whether they're lewd or not, just to get seen on the internet, just to know that somebody is giving them a like on Facebook, or somebody is tweeting, or because I'm only a Facebook person. I'm not going the Twitter route. It's just too much. So, just things like that. Everybody has a sense of wanting to belong to something, wanting a high sense of being validated. And I believe social media is an outlet that allows for that. And I believe in the realms of should it be regulated or not, is really up to the person, because you don't have to actually entertain it. Mm-hmm. So if there's something that you see that let's say for instance on Facebook, you have friends who post things that you don't like, you can easily restrict them from your page. Mm-hmm. You can unfollow them, so you don't see what they do, or just simply ignore it, because you know that for a fact it's something that you don't care to entertain, and that you're strong enough to just say, well, whatever, and keep it moving, because all it is a facade that one puts up for validation in the realm of whatever mechanisms, or some sort of validation that social media brings through others online. So regulation, I think, is all up to the person. Government coming in and doing something only if it is a situation where I feel that leads to physical interactions, that evidence that shows that when a person is doing something or saying something that leads to a very strong likelihood of a physical interaction, I think it should be
any threats. I think would be one way of putting that.
Threats. To sum it all up, I agree. In that realm, I believe that those should definitely be looked into, because I believe in tact and decorum, and when it gets to be out of control, yes, you need someone to step in.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I don't think you've liked any of my Facebook pages posts. Not my personal page, but the Dawkins154 page. Jerry, do you even like my page on Facebook?
I'm a fan of that page.
I don't know. I'm asking you, are you?
I may be or may not. I don't know. I'm a very popular person, not by choice, and so it's hard to keep up with many.
So humble.
Yeah, so humble I am. I really am. I really am. Don't let the gift of gab and master of rhetoric fool you. I'm just being a silly, funny man here because I'm enjoying my time with my good friend here of over 2 years that I didn't even know had the same degree as myself. We could have possibly went into business with one another.
I don't know about any business in film right now.
Yeah, see, that's why
my
it
YouTube
wasn't
channel is doing pretty well, though. You know?
Oh, your YouTube. Oh, you actually keep a channel
we just
going.
passed 1,000 subs, so.
Oh,
yeah.
That's marvelous.
Marvelous.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Clap, clap.
Thank you.
I'm actually snapping, though.
All right, so how do I feel about people act online versus...
How do you feel? Do tell.
Well,
do tell.
I have a different perspective on that just because I don't use Facebook as much as, like, I think of, when I hear online, you think of, like, social media, I think of, like, in video games. So, the interaction within video games. I think it's atrocious, and I think a lot of... I think it's pathetic is another word to be used by that.
Mm-hmm.
So, the way people act on online video games, and I've said this on my stream, is very pathetic to me. I really hate the fact that someone would tell someone else to go kill themselves because they're bad at a video game. That's just
it gets
something
that
I
deep?
never understood. Well, I mean, they don't. I mean, it gets. I wouldn't say deep because they're not thinking deeply. They're just upset and they're like, say things harshly.
So it's a combat sport where tensions are high and they're just speaking out of aggression, not really.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, and that's something I just never understood how someone would even say that, and I don't. I just. It kind of along the lines of what I said earlier with like getting mad at video games. Like, why do you get mad at a video game? I don't understand why you would take someone, like, get so upset at someone at a video game. In terms of every person that's online playing a computer game, like if I'm in an Overwatch game, which is 6-on-6, that's 12 human beings there. Like, every single one of those people behind their alias and behind their keyboard or whatever, they have a life and they have a family and they have friends and they are human beings. And I would never, I never understood someone saying go kill yourself, because there's just like, there's so much more to that person than, and I know most people don't think this far in terms of online video games, but I just never understood. Like, it's one thing to be bad at something, it's another thing to be like a worthless person. And people will say like you're worthless, blah blah blah. Like, people say really, really terrible things in games, and I just never understood being so terrible in a video game to another person. Obviously, there's been moments where I was not happy with people's performance in video games, whether it be on my team or anything, but I wouldn't tell them to go kill themselves. I would say you should do this instead, like do this play instead of the play you made. Stuff like that, or whatever. So I always make an effort if people, like, especially something I hate too is in online video games, you'll notice this, people that have microphones will talk for the game, but as soon as they get angry at somebody, they will type their insults to that person. So I'll do two things. I'll say, with my microphone, I'll say, oh, did your mic break? What happened? Why are you typing your insults? If you have something to say it. Two is I'll make, a point along the lines of like, oh yeah, dude, you should totally go do that because, it's a video game and I'm totally upset. It's ruined my life, et cetera, et cetera. Like, I'll always call out that person for being an idiot. And usually they kind of just shut up, honestly. I've had pretty good responses to that strategy so far. And good responses, not in the sense that, like, positive responses, but good in the terms that they will know that they're being an idiot and shut up.
Oh, so it was a who said that moment.
What do you mean? Like,
from earlier?
Like from the
yeah.
Not really. I mean, I know who said it. I'll just be like,
but they're mute. It's like, oh.
Do you understand what you don't understand? You
put them on the spot.
Right. Yeah. As soon as you call someone out and make them the center of attention, because right now they're trying to make that other person the center of attention for being bad at the video game.
Right.
But as soon as you turn around and you say, hey, what the fudge are you saying? You're an awful person. Then the center of attention's back on them.
What did you
not
just
on
say?
The person.
What you said?
What the fudge are you saying?
Oh, fudge. Oh, wow.
Yeah, like as soon as you turn the attention back on them, they don't like that. But so people act online. And another thing, the other point of that is that would half of those things be being said if they were in person with that other person across the internet? Of course not.
I agree.
So I mean, obviously, I agree completely with you have the cushion of the computer, keeping you separate from that person. I always crack up. There was a LAN I went to in 2011 in
LAN?
Philadelphia. LAN is a local area network's what it's called, but it's like a LAN tournament is where a bunch of people bring their computers and you're like in the same center. It was like a big they had like tournaments for several games there. So we were there for Left 4 Dead 2, but they had like a Counter-Strike. So they had several games. I guess you probably don't know any of these. They had several games there. It was like a big convention center type thing, and they just had long tables where people just had their computers right next to each other, et cetera, et cetera. Do I think anything, like there was, the attitudes towards the other teams are so much different there in person than it is online that it's like night and day almost. Because, like after the game, people would be like laughing and like shaking hands and stuff and, like joking about the game as opposed to like, oh, you suck, and everybody better than you, et cetera, et cetera. But the funny story about that is there's two dudes in the Left 4 Dead 2 community, which is the game I play, that were talking just so much trash to each other back and forth for months leading up to this thing, and they're both saying, fight me at GXL, fight me at GXL. GXL was the name of the event. And they're saying, fight me there, fight me there. Neither of them showed up. So neither of them even came to this whole thing that they were making this big fuss about, and neither of them even fudging showed up, which I just thought was just so great. But yeah, obviously people act very different online because they know they can. Do I feel like do I think it should or could be regulated? Do I think it could be regulated? Not any more than it currently is in terms of, because you can turn on like filters and stuff for bad words. I think that's about as far as you can go filtering it. Unless you're gonna have, a machine keep track of every message you send, et cetera, which could be bad. It wouldn't take context into account or anything, or if you were joking around with your friend or whatever. Not that you would joke around and tell your friend to kill themselves, because I would never do that. But it happens. Anyway, I don't think it can be regulated. I don't think it should be regulated. I'm kind of one of the we haven't really ever talked about anything political, Jerry, but I'm pretty conservative, so I tend to lean more towards keeping the government out of things. And I agree with your point of if it was like a threat, like a literal threat being made, then maybe I would be like more inclined to like, police interference and stuff. Not saying I'm anti-police interference, but I'd be more inclined to like regulation of threats. But as far as like, most of the threats online are very empty in terms of, oh, you should kill yourself or blah, blah, blah. But once you got into something a step further than that of like, people saying, I'll find out where you live, et cetera, which does happen. Not that people come and kill you, but like people will like DOS you, which is like F up your internet. And like people do stuff over the internet to other people that are illegal. Stuff like that I'm not against regulating, but I don't have like a solution in terms of like what we should implement. But in terms of, can it be regulated? It would probably cost a decent chunk of money to be regulated. And should it be regulated? I don't think hate speech is free speech, as much as you don't like that. The only speech that isn't free speech is speech that directly causes or threatens violence. So that kind of speech is the only thing I would be for being regulated.
I concur on that one. That's the main thing to me, because so many links to cases where something that could have been prevented just because when you go back online and backtrack, oh, they stated they were going to do this and it actually happened.
Right.
And so, and I think it's only as good to regulate as if the person that received the threat pursues it.
Uh-huh.
And if they don't, then, it's virtually kind of not plausible to think that they can just sit there and monitor and know.
Yeah.
So, people have to do their part. I believe you have to be an active participant in the process as well. The individual, when you're threatened online, go kill yourself and stuff like that, that's just more of a suggestion of what you should do with your life. But to say I'm going to kill you,
But at the same time, I guess it's one thing when you hear that on Facebook and you have their Facebook page and their name right there. But if you think about it, if someone says that to you in like an Overwatch game, if they actually care, they will, take down your account information and like write it down and actually follow up with you and stuff. But that takes effort to like find out who someone is through their like online alias. It can be done, but it takes like literal effort. And for my only problem, and I totally I agree with what you're saying in terms of there's some responsibility on the person doing that to protect themselves, but it is a lot more effort when you're in a gaming community where you actually have to take the effort of finding out who that person is, et cetera,
Right.
as opposed to just having their name already and stuff. And and I say this like I don't even know of a story. There may be, I'm sure there's instances where people have been so upset over a video game that they've gone and killed somebody before, but that's literally never, that's so uncommon that I don't think it requires regulation right now. Stuff on Facebook, I think, would be a better place to start, because I think most people playing video games might get angry at the video game and say, some bad stuff towards someone, but as soon as they shut down the game and start doing something else with their day, they kind of forget about it and aren't actually angry enough to follow up with this person and track down where they live, et cetera. But Facebook, I think, is a more accurate representation of who a person is than their online persona in a video game, to me.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, because like I said earlier, it's more of like banter in a sense. Just in the heat of the moment of being competitive with a sport of sorts. You're not really going to, although there were some instances where referees got chopped in the neck and died, but that's a different story. But I understand exactly what you're...
that coach from that 11U game doesn't track me down 10 years later.
Right, yeah. So, so I definitely understand it, but in the context of gaming and what have you, I agree, though. It's a little bit more, it's easier to do when it's with a social media outlet as opposed to gaming.
Right.
I like the avenue that you brought with this topic, because you went the gaming route, and I stuck with social media.
Well, that's the point of the podcast, is getting different perspectives on stuff.
Yeah, see,
because
this
we
is
hear
your
the
way.
same word, and we have different ideas of what
Yeah,
that
and
is.
I'm not sure if that was shade at me
Huh?
or not.
No.
Or was it? Okay.
No.
I'm just making
I'm
sure.
just saying that
with,
we don't
with
have...
Chris, you guys, you just have to understand. He has a sly way of sneaking in his...
Sorry, my phone went off. Anyway, go on.
Yeah. He has a sly way of digging in his digs at me, and then
When have I ever taken a dig?
That's actually how we met. He took a dig at me saying that I was a custodian once at a school. And he said, "What custodian is? You mean a janitor?" I said, "Well, why? Yes." He said, "Well, why didn't you just say janitor?" I said, "Well, I was the keeper of the building. That's pretty much what a custodian does, like a custodian of records, keeper of the records." And I thought it was so funny to me, because I said, this guy doesn't know me, but he was brave enough to just say, you're trying to be fancy, but there's no need for that. You could have just simplistically said janitor and moved it on. There's nothing, you didn't romanticize it by saying custodian, at least in my realm. And that's the way I took it. And I said, this guy is a shady character, and I like it, because I'm a guy who likes to throw shade, and I call myself the king of shade.
Wow.
Because I'm a humorist, and humor is what keeps life going along with music, and of course other things, of course. But I just thought that was something. I said, you know what, this guy, we're gonna have a lot of fun. As he sat behind me, and that's
how I met Jerry. When I started at Jump Pact, I sat in the seat right behind him.
Yes, indeed, and it's been fun ever since. I can tell you that much.
Yep.
No ill will, nothing of the sort. Nothing.
That's funny that you thought I was a shady character, and that made you want to follow up in terms of continuing to talk with me, because if I thought someone was shady, I would go the other way.
Yeah, and my shady...
I'm more of like, if you're trying to, I'll call you out on things. Not just you, just anybody. Like, if I think something's wrong, or if you say something stupid, I'll call you out on it usually. Not that what you said was stupid, but I'll speak my mind to an extent. I won't like crush your feelings with it, but if it's something like that where I think I can, get a little conversation going, I'll say my mind,
Right, that's good, and that's something I like. I like for people who speak their mind and stand up for themselves, and especially defend themselves if they're attacked. I mean, that's something that would draw me to a person. And let's say, for instance, I know this is sort of off topic, But when you mentioned the shady part, like usually you'll turn from somebody that's
Mhm.
shady and not even deal with them. But the
Mhm.
idea that I interpreted, or at least felt that you were that way, and I wanted to go and pursue getting to know you a little bit better because I considered that a challenge, and I wanted to have confirmation of what I first picked up. But I don't consider you shady in the manner that you think of shady. But I just said
Okay.
you have a lot of, let's say, crafty ways of taking a dig. But it may not be a dig, but in my eyes and ears, it's viewed that way and seen and heard that way because I find it funny. I can be tickled very easily with words, and you have a way about your digs that I find very funny and amusing. And I was going to mention the movie Lion King. Are you familiar with that?
It's one of my favorite movies.
Yes, one of my favorite movies of all time.
I have a picture of Matthew Broderick framed actually on my wall right next to my computer. There's a little picture of Simba. It's signed. My sister got it for me for Christmas.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's excellent. He was indeed Simba as a grown.
Yep, voice of
Lion.
adult Simba.
Yes, he was.
Child Simba sucks. Adult Simba's the best. Anyway, go on.
Oh yes, that guy. I don't even think he acts anymore. Jonathan Taylor Thomas.
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen him in anything in a long time.
Yeah. So, but anywho, I mentioned that movie because everyone to this day can't understand why I took a liking to Scar as opposed to Mufasa and the rest of the gang.
Uh-huh.
I said, no, Scar I could relate to very heavily. I'm the youngest of my siblings. He was the youngest between him and his brother, Mufasa, and obviously much more smarter, in my opinion.
Wow.
And yeah, he was because Mufasa should have just went on and ended him a long time ago. That man was a threat, and or at least that lion was a threat, and he just took the high road, and it just did not end well for him. And so I thought there was a method to Scar's madness, and he did indeed go too far when he killed Mufasa. That was over the top, but it had to be done. But I'm just thinking of. This is not me and how I feel about life per se, but to tell a story, I thought that was just wonderful. That he just took the leap and said, you know what, this has to be done, because he at least tried to be humane about it and not be responsible for it through his own hands. He wanted the antelopes,
the buffalo, but it's his. He
Yeah,
orchestrated the whole thing. It's
yes,
his
it was
The
brilliant.
blood's on his hands.
It was brilliant.
regardless.
It was brilliant.
Even if he didn't leap on the side and he throws him off the cliff or whatever, that blood's on his hands still.
Yeah, but at least he could live a little bit better. He probably would have ran
ridiculous,
Pride
man.
Rock a little bit better.
He's setting up this whole thing where he's framing the child for killing his dad, and you're praising him for being all humane about it.
No, see, that's the
Come
thing.
on now.
See, you're thinking about what happened afterwards.
No, that's all orchestrated into the plan. He left Simba in there so that he would. It would be his fault because he's like, "Oh, work on that roar of yours, Kappa," and then he walked away.
But
no,
no.
"Oh, your roar caused the whole thing."
Yeah, but at the
Thanks
same
a lot, 'cause
time,
you killed your dad.
They thought Simba was dead. He didn't even blame Simba for the death of Mufasa.
He did.
He
Immediately
did it
upon coming down. Oh, you mean to the rest of the
pride.
group.
That's
Okay.
why they were shocked when Sarabi, that he pimp smacked, when she got up and said, "Simba, it's not true. Tell me it's not true."
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Okay, good. So
I remember the movie very well. I've seen
Good.
it an infinite amount of times.
okay, look at you trying to challenge me.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, okay, but that's great. And you should have understood that he only went that route because he was pushed up against the wall, and he just had to.
He was not pushed up against the wall.
His back was against the wall.
No.
He tried to get out of it at that time.
You're acting
and
like Mufasa caused him to start all these evil acts. He was like, I
Mufasa
wanted
should
to
not
be in power. That was
have
his thing.
been parading himself all healthy and orange looking around his brother,
All healthy
who was
and orange
obviously sick and had something wrong with him. He didn't see about he didn't see about Scar. He didn't go and say, "Are you okay today?" And I didn't see that.
He was a bad brother, is what you're saying.
He
They're
should have been a
both bad
better.
brothers. They should have communicated.
Should have been a
better.
better big brother, but he wasn't. He was more about messing around with all the other females in the pride and
What?
having Simba go with his own sister. It was just awful.
What?
Hmm? Yes, Nala is his sister technically. Lions mate with the. Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, well, I have several problems with what you're saying here.
Okay, what?
First is, you acting like Scar's a victim for every bad thing that he did in that movie. You're acting like his back was not up against the wall. All he said This all starts with Simba is like, whatever that's called at the very beginning of the movie, where they like hold him up and they did the little juice on his forehead and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then Mufasa goes to Scar and he's like, I didn't see you at the ceremony. And Scar's like, oh, I just don't care. And that from that point on, Scar gets this plan where he's like, oh, well, I could kill Mufasa and Simba and become the king. He's not pushed up against a wall. He's creating all of this for himself. He's free to live however he wants, free in the pride, and he's causing all of this. He's like, oh, well, if I have this idea where if I kill both of them, I can become king. He's starting all of this. He's not pushed up against any wall. He's free to live. He's not like in jail or anything. He's just free to live however you want, and he starts all this by his desire to be king. That's my first problem. My second problem is if your first point is Mufasa shouldn't have been parading around with all the woman lions, and then you're going to say Simba and Nala are sisters, and that's just how lions are, then your first point's invalid. If you're going to say that's just how lions are, they just parade around with everybody and they're all siblings, then your point of Mufasa's a bad brother because he paraded around with everybody and they're all siblings is invalid.
I never said that. I said that he paraded around him being healthy, orange-looking, and
at what
very
point
robust.
What scene in the movie shows Mufasa parading around?
That grand pomp and circumstance of his son being born. He knew what he was doing.
The next king of the jungle, though, or not jungle? Like, is it a jungle? Whatever. All the animals are there.
King of the jungle. I never understood why they said that lions don't live in jungles, but
right.
But I just, I'm just being the antagonist for the sake of being the antagonist, and I just feel that he should have been there for his brother Scar a little bit deeper. Although The Lion King was a very short movie when you think about it, I said they really should have delved into the relationship of Mufasa and Scar beforehand. And they have this new cartoon that came out maybe a year ago, The Lion Guard, which came out with this background to Scar's story of him being in charge of the Lion Guard once and having the roar and losing it because he used it for evil. And that right there just was left field to me, and I just left the series alone. I said, you know what, I had a better idea what they could have did was that.
But I'm saying I don't know. You're saying
you know what?
I think there's no actual factual evidence of Scar being up against a wall or Mufasa parading around. I just feel that way.
No, I think the factual evidence of him being pushed against the wall was when he was running the kingdom, and he was losing control, and it was not going good, and the confrontation that Simba put him in. When he tried to get out of that, I mean, who wants to die? And he saw himself getting ready to likely be taken, and he quickly on his feet forged the story of Scar being, or of Simba rather, being responsible for his father's death.
That wasn't on his feet. That was all orchestrated, dude.
Oh no! Simba was supposed to be Simba was supposed to be dead. That's why he told the three hyenas. He told Simba. He said, "It's a surprise to see you alive." And he looked up at the hyenas like, "Oh, you told me he was dead, but he wasn't." And so now he used the theory of...
Oh, that's what you're talking about.
Yes.
Okay.
See, that's what I'm saying. They never knew. They thought Simba was dead.
Right.
He never said...
he knew he was alive, but he said, if you come back, we'll kill you, whatever. He actually... Yeah, the hyenas knew that. See, but Scar thought he was dead, too.
Exactly.
Okay.
They lied to him. So he was betrayed by those he trusted to carry out a task that he should have been smart enough to know that if they couldn't even do that, in terms of having Mufasa killed, and he had to do it himself, he should have just went on and killed his nephew. But he had a bleeding heart for their young cub.
That's not true.
He had a bleeding heart.
That shot where it's just him with a straight face while Simba runs away, and he goes, kill him.
That was beautiful.
No bleeding heart in that shot at all. It's just straight face. Let's get it done.
He showed him mercy by not letting it be done at his hands.
He didn't want to do it. He's got servants who are faster than him probably, because he's like a not strong lion. He's just like he
was strong enough to throw his brother off that cliff. Yes, he was.
Well, he has strong enough to peel his hands off of the thing.
Well, you know what? I blame Mufasa for his own demise. He knew his brother was insane. He should have dealt with him and should not have placated that mental illness. And this is what happens when you placate mental illness that goes that far. He should have dealt with it.
I'm not saying Mufasa couldn't have been a better brother here. I'm just saying that you're making excuses for a criminal, and I'm not a fan of that.
I'm not stating anything such. I'm just
You're saying it's Mufasa's fault that Scar did all these bad things. That's not true.
I'm a true believer in prevention. When the signs are there, you better read them, adhere to them, and take care of business. When you don't, and the stuff just go bad, that is on you because you should have obeyed and you should have paid attention and you should have listened.
Yeah.
If you don't listen, you come up missing. And Scar, Scar came up missing on his own. He really did, and Mufasa most certainly did.
All I'm saying is, I'm not saying Mufasa maybe shouldn't have. Maybe he should have paid more attention to Scar, but Scar is still directly responsible for everything that he did.
Scar made that movie.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
All right, then.
Good character. No, for sure. But not good in morally, but good in terms of interesting.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, criminal directly responsible for what he did in that movie, Scar is.
Yeah, now we apply that to. Yeah, you don't have to. But if we were to apply that to real life, I would definitely agree with everything you just said. But this is fiction, and I love it, and I get to be the bad guy in fiction because I love method to madness type of characters.
Mm-hmm.
But now, if there's no method to your madness and you're just killing or doing whatever, I don't like that. I get easily disturbed and bored with those type of characters. There must be. This is grand. I just realized this is our film degree and love for film going into full mode here as we talk about The Lion King. Yeah, I think so.
Last like 15 minutes. Okay.
Grand.
All right, we're going to end it there. We're at...
I know that your powers of retention. All right, go ahead.
All right. So we're going to end it there. Thank you for being on, Jerry. I appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I truly, and surely enjoyed this day here with my friend Chris.
Thank you. Me as well. All right, we're going to sign off there. Thank you guys for listening. And a new episode coming up in a couple weeks here. So keep an eye out for that. And have a good evening, everybody.
Good day.